So we'll get started, and if they're late, they're late. Sorry to interrupt. So welcome to the Department of Theatre, Film and Television at the University of York. So this is just to make sure you know where you are. So now that's sorted, it is a great pleasure to introduce Ellie Williams today. So I'll be introducing her and telling you a little bit about her before we start. Just so for you that haven't been to this sort of live interview before, what we tend to do is have a conversation. I think we listen to we have a few examples that we're going to be listening to later on, and then you will have quite a lot of time to ask questions. So do think about questions, because if you don't think about questions, I have to think about more questions, and that's very stressful. I already thought about questions, so do think about your own questions so that you help us all. Just a quick reminder that our next talk is on the 6th of February, and that's sound designer Anna Bertmark, and it's also going to be a very similar format of a QA, and it's absolutely fantastic. So if you can make it, that would be great. But of course, we also have someone truly fantastic today. I've only met Ellie 45 minutes ago, but we've been emailing for quite a few months. She was introduced to me by another fantastic audio engineer called Anne Charles, who has given talks for us before, and she sent us both an email saying, you should meet each other. I think you'd really get along, and I think she was right.
I think she was.
And the first thing I do when that happens, I was like, do you want to come and give a talk? And she said yes, so we've been emailed for a few months. But it's really exciting because Ellie has an amazing career track. And what kind of struck me when we emailed for the first time and you told me about your career is what an interesting and maybe slightly unusual path you have, that many of people that specialize in sound might not actually consider, how you can go from a production career to a sound career. She specializes in nature documentaries, as you already know. She has worked for the BBC Natural History Unit for 16 years, first in production, then as freelance recordist. And she's currently working on BBC Two's First Year on Earth series. I'm not going to say anything else because I'm sure you will say this much better than I will. But I just want you to know how thrilled I am that you're here, and that I know you travelled a long way to be with us. So tell us a little bit about how you got into the audio industry.
Yes, it wasn't a very conventional path I took, and it was one with many twists and turns. Sound for me has always been as important as eating or sleeping. It's always been something I've really been aware of and needed in my life, whether that's music or just being aware of what's around me in nature or in the world. So I'm always listening quite intensely to wherever I am. I went to university, but I didn't study sound, because for me then, apart from being a musician, I didn't really realise that I could do a career in sound. So I went to university, and I'm amazed I got a degree, because I was basically playing my bass guitar in bands, loads of bands every night. So I managed to scrape my way through a degree, and then someone I was in a band with had his own recording studio. So we used to go and we used to record there, but I used to be so fascinated by what he was doing, and this enormous desk and kind of bands coming in and out. And so I started kind of absorbing little bits from him and just helping him out, really. And then I did a bit of live sound at festivals, because I just wanted to be in the world of music, really. And then what did I do then? It's a very, very twisty and turny path. And then I had itchy feet, so I went travelling, and I decided that I should go to the Amazon rainforest, because it seemed like a really
just because
amazing place to go. So I went there, and I worked as a volunteer setting up a nature reserve in Peru. And just while we were there were some animals being rehabilitated. So there were kind of spider monkeys and capuchin monkeys and parrots, and I just really, really thrived in that environment, just listening to the world around me and just having these encounters with wildlife. And then I ran out of money and I came home. I did more gigging in bands, and the band I was in then, the singer worked for an independent production company, and she said, oh, come and do some running for me. So I went and worked on a series, which is totally different to what I'm into now, called Celebrity Poker Club, which involved involved working all night in a really dingy, smoky studio in an estate in Cardiff with some celebrities that weren't very famous, but liked to think they were, and they were quite hard work. And it wasn't for me, but I loved TV and I loved wildlife, and I was in Bristol at the time, and I was like, oh, I heard of the Natural History Unit. I love wildlife programmes. I thought, you know, this is where I should try and get into. So I spent months applying for things and eventually got my foot in the door with a series about India, and it was so long ago that this was the first ever programme that the BBC had done in high definition. Okay. So up to then we'd just been in standard definition, and I just helped set up all these shoots, and it was such a good way just to suss out what everybody was doing, like what the coordinator was doing, the producer, director, and then just setting up and finding out about what the camera operator did and how his world worked, and the sound operator and the presenters. And I just absolutely loved it. And then I just, went from that to a series in the Natural World series, and did a shoot in Japan with them. And then I worked in Borneo on a series called Orangutan Diaries, and did some edit assisting on that shoot, which was wonderful because the orangutans used to come and cuddle us at lunchtime, so you just sit there cuddling these orangutans. And
not the worst lunchtime.
No, although they wouldn't let go, then they're really strong. So you'd be like, oh. And then I went on Big Cat Diary, and that was really interesting because there was multiple crews on that, and there was 3 camera crews. So there was cheetahs, leopards, and lions, and they would all go off in their separate ways each day and go and film what was happening that day, and then we'd be cutting for. They weren't live shows then, but cutting each programme as we were there. And then, sorry, this is a very long description, but then I was in the BBC canteen, which has terrible food, but it's a way of like chatting to people. And the series producer of a series called South Pacific came up to me as I was in the queue, and he said, "Ellie, I want you to work on my series." I said, "Oh, brilliant, okay." And then 2 months later, I was in New Zealand for a year and a half, setting up a production hub for that series. And I was out there with 3 producers, and researchers would come in, and camera operators would come in as well. So I kind of kept all that going and set up shoots all over the South Pacific to quite remote atolls and islands. This was quite a turning point for me, because in my house I had a big equipment room, and in that equipment room there were 4 Panasonic Vericam kits. Remember that camera, Andrew? And 1 sound kit, and these kits would come in and out with the camera operators when they went off on their shoots. And unfortunately I was working so many hours that I just didn't have a chance to breathe while I was there, but this sound kit would literally look at me, kind of taunting me, and I just, for some reason, I was so desperate to have a go, but I didn't quite have the confidence to just go, right, let's suss this out. And it was almost like I wanted to do it so much that I was afraid of not being able to do it, so this kit would look at me and look at me. And then when I came back from that trip, I was assigned to the Spring Watch, Autumn Watch series, and that was amazing because I went on a remote, the remote OB team. They basically went away for quite a few months a year. So we were a small remote team with, there was a dedicated sound recordist on that, and a live truck that would send our films out and our live broadcast each week. But the sound recordist, he's quite a famous natural history sound recordist called Gary Moore. He would see me working away and like coordinating and looking longingly at what he was doing, and in the evening we'd have beers and I'd just say, "Oh Gary, I'm just desperate to try what you're doing. I've just got this like passion for it." And he just said, "Right, Ellie, I'll take you under my wing." And so while we were away all around the UK, before I started out my day of work each day, he'd get me up at 6 in the morning and we'd go and film whatever he needed to film. So I remember this one day on Orkney, it was freezing cold, and he draped this camo net over my head, and he was like, "Right, Ellie, on your knees and your elbows." And we crawled across this field and got to the other side, and there was a little cliff, just not very high, and and we draped some microphones over the side, hung them over, and there was a seal colony. And the seals, he very, very kindly would, we'd take an extra pair of headphones and use a splitter. And so I'd listen to what he was recording, and we just kind of looked at each other and listened to these seals singing, and it was just, I knew I was so happy doing that role. And we would go out kind of filming the sound, recording the sound of stags rutting in the distance with like a long range microphone, and then so that kind of slowly kind of gave me a taste of what it was like to be a field recordist. And then the following year I did a bit of recording on my own, but also did the live levels in the OB truck.
Okay.
So Gary was on the end of where the presenter was for the live broadcast, and that they would you'd come down a big long cable into the OB truck, and then I'd get the levels, and we'd kind of do our live, that would feed our live broadcast into the main show of Springwatch. So that was amazing, because that was me sitting at a mixing desk thinking, I'm doing this is amazing. And I'm actually doing it, and I can do it. And then for the next few years I just combined production coordinating and sound recording. So I'd set the shoot up, and then I'd go and be the recordist on that shoot, and gradually built my confidence up and up and up until, it's only a year and a half ago that I left the BBC to become freelance. So I've only been a proper freelance sound recordist for a year and a half. So it's still relatively new to me, but yeah.
Wow.
Yes, that was quite long. Sorry
No,
about that.
what I was going to say is that it strikes me how passionate you are. I interview loads of people in sound, and I have no problem in saying that you're probably the most passionate person
Really?
to talk about their field. I think it's evident that you love what you do, and it's so beautiful to kind of hear, because you hear loads of people about their careers, but kind of hearing that real pure passion in what you do and how much you love, it definitely comes through. And it's just, I was just listening to your stories and thinking how moving it is to hear someone that obviously loves what they do and finds a passion throughout. So thank you for sharing that. That was actually really, really beautiful. Thank you.
It's difficult. It's been difficult for me because I've wanted it so badly that it's almost stopped me doing it earlier.
Okay.
Which sounds silly.
So is it because you felt maybe when you wanted to do it, you wanted to be perfect? Is that
possibly
what it was?
Yeah, it just feels like I'd see sound recordists on location and they'd be my heroes, because they'd just be the person that was just keeping everyone kind of really calm. They'd have all this amazing kit on. I'd listen to what they were doing and just think, oh my God, they're just creating such beauty without trying to, I don't know, get noticed like maybe other people in the crew might be constantly wanting to do. But
we can cut that part out.
But for me, I don't know. It's just always been a beautiful craft for me. But and almost so beautiful that I've been afraid to not be good at it, which sounds ridiculous. Maybe it's because I'm a woman that I'm like that. But
so and at what point did you feel, okay, now I feel like I'm really good at this. I've made it. I'm an established recordist. Yeah. I know my craft, and I feel confident I do it. So was there a moment or a project that led you to feel that way?
I think the last year. It's very recent. Yeah. I did about 5 shoots in the last year, where I was, very much. It was me doing the sound. It was, a high budget series. We were doing a series for the UK and for America. I had loads of things going on. I had 2 camera crews, so I had to set up sound for the second crew whilst being the main recordist for the first crew, and lots of other kind of cameras like GoPros and things going on. So I was having to manage all the time codes of everything. And at that point I thought, yes, I'm doing this. It's really complicated. I'm doing it well, and I need to feel like I'm not good enough anymore. It sounds ridiculous to speak like that, but
no, that's fine. But I think it's kind of good to kind of go back to those moments and thinking, okay, that's what made me feel accomplished.
Yeah, because I think it's a very complicated craft, and although I've been able to record before for many years, being able to do something as complex as the last year and do it well, that feels a real step for me in my career.
wonderful. And of course, kind of your specialisation is nature documentaries. And is there anything specific, because it's a very specific choice in the field. So what drove you to nature documentaries? And I guess what excites you specifically? Because you talked about how passionate you're about sound and the craft, but what makes you passionate about sound for nature documentaries?
Yeah. I think I've always admired the finished product of a nature documentary in terms of the beauty that it shows, and also how immersed you can become when you watch a nature documentary, and how many people kind of feel enjoyment and escapism watching them, which can be good and bad sometimes. But personally, being on location and being sent to all these really amazingly remote places and working with people that I'm just absolutely fascinated by. You know, you meet scientists who've dedicated their whole life to one species, and you get to hang out with them and learn with them and get to have these intimate experiences with the animals. I just find that absolutely fascinating. And I just feel really good when I do it. It feels like it's soul food for me. But also just the challenge for me of being pushed to my limits as well, just in terms of going places that are just so hot that you just want to fall asleep rather than work. Or like one shoot I did, we were camping in the snow for 5 weeks, and you'd wake up in the morning and unzip your tent and the snow would all fall in.
Oh dear.
It was so cold. You'd wear everything you had. I would sneak a hot water bottle in with me, and the other people on the crew thought I was a wuss, but it kept me warm. And just you know, being in that beauty and being somewhere, you know, having the privilege of being sent somewhere that you wouldn't normally have access to or be able to do without that support. And that also just I find it very hard being a tourist after going on these shoots, because I don't know, the connection you have through being with people from a country you're going to and having a purpose and a meaning to a trip. It just it feels like a very kind of precious life experiences for me.
Yeah.
So.
And I was quite interesting. You said you spend weeks kind of following kind of specific group of animals. So as a sound record, because of course when we see the finished piece, we kind of generally we have this following of this particular kind of representative of the species. And I was wondering, as sound recorders, how much kind of connection do you have with that particular animal? Is there a particular animal that you actually record, or are you recording kind of a general soundscape, or do you actually follow a specific creature?
Definitely follow a specific creature, because you're with the
So that's a really strange sentence.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Rather than just getting the sound of an animal. Yeah, because you're going with the crew and they are filming something specific, your opportunities to record are normally with that same species. Although it is very hard recording sound when you're with a crew, because they're a noisy bunch and it's really hard to shut them up. So sometimes I do, after the end of the shoot, I'll ask we normally have wildlife experts that take us out.
Okay.
In their, say I'm thinking about Africa at the moment, but they'll take you out and you're in their safari. They have like adapted camera vehicles. And I'll normally say to them, "Oh, can you take me out tomorrow? When everyone's de-rigging, I'll do my de-rigging the night before, and then have a bare bones kit, maybe my boom and my record mixer, and then go out and I guess yes. Then I will say to him, because it's actually very hard to find a specific animal.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
So on that day, I'll just say, right, let's go and see what we can record of elephants, or
Okay.
Because with the series I've just done, the main character we were following, she was this baby elephant. She was in a herd where one of the matriarchs, or the matriarch, was collared. So we would get GPS coordinates every day, and then the crew would find her. But to ask the charity, they're called Save the Elephants, to do that just for me was a bit too much. So
I see.
you kind of adapt and do whatever you can. But
cool. It'd be really, really interesting. And we were talking earlier, and this is something that I hadn't considered, but it was quite interesting. You're telling me a little bit about the ethics.
Yeah, so in terms of being there with the wildlife, I don't really like to feel like I'm being intrusive or changing their behaviour. So we very much, the ethics of wildlife documentaries are that you're filming what they would do naturally anyway, as much as you possibly can. But there was a series recently, one of the big blue chips, I don't know which, it might have been Blue Planet 2, or I think it probably was Blue Planet 2, but I think they had a situation where some penguins slipped down this icy slope and got stuck. And normally you're not really supposed to help wildlife, but the crew that were there were so conscious of the impact that we're having on wildlife at the moment and climate change that they went and helped them out. And I think they built them a few steps in the snow. And actually, I think that's fine. I think that's really, you can't just let something die when you've got the power to.
So
to stop it.
That would be awful, isn't it, to know that that's going to happen? Yeah, yes. And you were saying that there was a worry that people would criticise the behaviour.
Yeah, there are certain tabloids, mainstream tabloids, that love to criticise the BBC, and so you have to be very, very careful about how you behave. Not just for them, but you've got to think about our reputation. And
absolutely, yeah.
So but sometimes your heart kind of overrides that.
So. And so we talked about kind of the passion behind the specialism. And what about kind of technical and creative skills?
Yeah, for me, the technical and the creative merged together. Yes, technically, for me, when I'm offered a shoot, I start to plan it very early, and I just try and get as much information as I can, so I can work out how best to do things and whether I need to think outside the box. Just first of all, just knowing what the vision of the producer is really important, because then you can start to piece it all together. But also then, just working out what kind of equipment you need, whether you can just use standard equipment, like the standard kit you have, or start hiring things in a bit more unusual.
And what sort of thing do you use? So tell us a little bit about what equipment you use and when you would change setups and why. I think that might be of interest.
So I have a 633 mixer, which is a very standard sound devices mixer, but it's brilliant. I have a Sennheiser 8060 microphone, and I have a 416. And I have, I've just been given another microphone, I can't remember, a longer range gun mic. And what else do I? So I'm still hiring in radio mics, because I'm waiting for, there's some really good digital radio mics called the A10s that have been brought out, but the range isn't so good, so I would like to get those when they do a next generation of those. But
waiting to come out.
Yes. But so normally I'll hire 2 to 4 radio mics as well. And then in terms of additional things, it would be, say if I was going to a really cold location, I might just get slightly different cables that might deal with the cold more. I might get more big rechargeable MP batteries, because they just go very quickly in the cold. They lose battery almost straight away. So you just have to start thinking about what you might encounter and what you might need.
And what about the technical skills? So what would you say are kind of the main technical skills in this type of tool?
Technical skills. How to boom well is really important. How to mic someone up is very important. How to get the levels correct. How to work with all the different cameras that get thrown your way and work out how to get the level right at that end. What else do you need? Technically, just knowing everything intimately, really, because everything's become digital. There are so many different menus, and all the different radio mics have menus, and the mixer, that you just need to very thoroughly know every different option. Make sure, because I was hiring kit for a long time, and that was a bit stressful, because you'd never know who'd used it before, and you'd have to. I mean, the hire companies are very good at resetting everything, but you just have to go through everything and just make sure the settings are right for the production you're working on. And
so mostly being familiar with what it is that you use and know how to operate competently.
Which is, it's quite hard to do until you have your own equipment. You can just sit and play with it. So
and it's one of the kind of the main pieces of advice we give our students, that just know the equipment that you're using and how to use it inside out, so you don't get caught up in a location, especially if you're working remotely. You don't want to be caught up kind of realizing you actually don't know how to do a certain thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you talked about how for you kind of technical and creative aspects kind of cross over quite a lot. So do you want to tell us about why that is and how that is?
Because I guess the creative parts of my job are working out how to technically solve, or let's have a look. If you have a creative vision of what the producer wants you to record, you have to think technically how you're going to achieve that in terms of where your microphones will be, how you'll place them, whether you might just need extra things. Oh, for example, in Iceland, I had normally the rye coats are grey, aren't they? The big windjammers, but the grey colour is exactly the same colour as an Arctic fox's tail and freaks them out. So I contacted Rycoat and they had some leftover material from Wimbledon.
Okay.
Because they have green microphones, so that was I guess that was a way of getting over that problem, and having really good wind protection, not disturbing the foxes. And
how did you know the foxes? Is it someone told you?
Yes.
Okay, I was going to say, how did you find it?
Yeah.
Did you just test to see at what point they got upset and then rang them?
I think there'd been a shoot before by another production and they'd had problems with the
So what do you mean by problems? Sorry, I'm curious now.
I think the foxes just hadn't wanted to come near them because they were afraid of it and weren't quite sure what it was.
Okay, so it's a tip there for you if you find yourself in that situation, just you know what to do. And tell us, what is the most exciting project you worked on?
I think it was going to film the Arctic foxes in Iceland this year, because it was the most remote place I've ever been to, and it was basically as far north as you can go in Iceland, which is at one point we were 12 nautical miles from the Arctic Circle. So it felt, it was a long journey to get there. The last part of the journey was going in a boat round these fingers of the fjords, because we were in a top fjord, and the crossing can get really, really, really choppy, and it felt like the boat was a submarine. We were literally just like carving our way through the waves, so it was a real relief to get there. And then it was so beautiful there, and very, I think the winters are very, very hard there, because people used to live there. We stayed in this wooden cottage at the start. There was a couple of cottages next to each other that we were able to hire, and the people there I think they'd abandoned it about 50 years ago in terms of living there all year round, because it was just too hard. There was a story of one woman who'd been pregnant and I think she'd had a problem with her pregnancy, and they'd had to carry her out on a wooden door for 2.5 hours to get to this boat. So
That sounds awful.
Yeah, so it's quite, you feel like you're so far away from home, and that was a real excitement for me. But also we had to trek quite high up to the fox's den, which was up on a mountain lake every day, which meant kind of carrying everything. So I had quite a small kit in my backpack, on my back. And yeah, it was just so beautiful. But also, there was that element of, we're actually quite humbled by the landscape, and we had like a stash of things we might need at the top, because the weather would come in very quickly, and we had a defibrillator and just the usual first aid stuff, flares, a shelter, and emergency food, because there could be a chance that we got stuck up there. But also, it was just so beautiful because it was very untouched by humans. There weren't any roads. Planes weren't allowed to fly over the nature reserve, so it was deadly quiet. And where you walked, you'd look down and I just used to be fascinated by where I was walking, because there was just so many different species of flora and just a tiny little patch of the ground, and you had to be very careful, because if you walked more than say 3 times on one stretch, then the plants would start to die, so you'd have to
no
it
pressure.
was just a very, very delicate
No pressure.
delicate environment. And and also the foxes, so we went to where we thought the den was, because we had an expert with us who'd kind of been watching them a few months before, and quite far into the shoot we realised that they'd moved right up to this ridge really high up. So we had to, the director I was with had to make a long call to his series producer to say, we need to get much higher and it's a bit more dangerous because you have to rock climb up this ridge.
Tip, rock climbing skills.
Rock climbing. It wasn't too bad, but with all the weight of your kit on the back, you just don't have any balance. You're kind of scrambling, but you know if you go like that, then you're gone. And it was quite a drop. It was a real drop. So luckily our fixer was a rope access expert, so he laid a route out for us. So we would clip in, rope in. We had harnesses, clip in, and just get up to this higher ridge, and then stay up there for 16 hours a day, waiting for these foxes. So yeah, it was quite a waiting game, but yeah, it was beautiful. We could, we didn't have to take water trucks. We could drink out of the waterfalls, and the foxes were just really amazing. So that was my most exciting trip.
And what do you do while you wait?
You eat a lot of M&Ms.
It's my very technical question. So what do you do? Do you eat M&Ms?
You get very cold. One day the wildlife cameraman Colin, he said, "Ellie, come over here," and look through my eyepiece. So I looked through his camera eyepiece, and he knew I hadn't seen one before, so he'd framed up an iceberg for me. I was like, "Oh, that's amazing!" So just spotting what's around you, and yeah, there's a lot of waiting.
Yes, I'm lots of rock climbing as well. Ellie sends the most wonderful emails. You always email me, say, I think you emailed me when you were in the cottage, because I think I got one.
No, there was no communication there. Or maybe Botswana.
I think, I get the kind of the most, the most fascinating email saying, "Yes, I'm here waiting for the Arctic foxes." I'm like, had never read that sort of statement in an email before. So the emails I get from you are the most exciting emails I've ever got.
Most of the time I'm a mum. I just make it sound glamorous.
Yeah, okay. Well,
like I'm away all the time.
It sounded really glamorous to me. So it worked. So tell us a little bit about how your work is in terms of the production. So things are like, at what point do you get hired? How closely do you work with the rest of the team?
Yeah. So I guess the initial stage for me is kind of finding out what's going on, what's being commissioned, what people might be about to start crewing up, and yeah, there's a couple of series I've heard about at the moment. So what I'll do is I'll email the producer or the series producer and just say, "Oh, I've heard this series is happening and it sounds really interesting if you need sound." And then, what happens in production then is they start budgeting up a series. So they'll have the producer will have an editorial vision of what he wants the series to be, or that his programme to be, and then they'll start kind of sectioning out the budget to work out what they can afford to do and where they can go, and also researching when specific wildlife behaviour happens, because a lot of things are just, you have this little window and you've got to be there at the right time. And then so once they know roughly when a shoot might happen, you'll get a phone call and they'll ask to pencil your dates. And then as time goes on, it gets more certain. They'll start asking you for things like photos for visas. You might have to do a visa application, stuff for film permits, and then you'll start going for vaccinations and things. You might need rabies, typhoid, hepatitis. So those things can take weeks. So yeah, and then your flight will be held, and then you might need to think about hire kit at that point, and that's all done. All that logistical stuff is with the coordinator. Yeah. And then suddenly you're on the plane and you're looking out the window and you're like, "Oh, it's actually happening. I'm going somewhere quite remote, but it's all going to be fine." And then then on location, the series I've been on, there's normally been a director, producer, camera, sound, researcher that's normally filming as well. Okay. And ditting as well, so looking after all the rushes. Yeah. So once you're on the location, you're a really tight crew and you're kind of being quite sensitive to what everybody else is trying to do. So everybody goes into their own world, because we're all multitasking these days, so everyone's got a lot on. And then sometimes there'll be a fixer there kind of to help you to where you're going to, and a local scientist might be there as well. But that's pretty much the core team when you're there. And I'll work very closely with the producer, kind of working out what they plan to do each day and what kit I might need to be taking with me. Giving the wildlife camera some support, because we've got to be quite careful about how we work with each other, because say I'm in a vehicle and I'm fiddling around with my sound kit and I move, then that'll move her lens. Oh, my friend Sue, I work with her a lot, so I'm saying woman, but and also she might make an annoying noise and ruin my recording, so we work really closely together. And then the researcher, they're normally second cameraing and or normally sometimes a bit pressurised because they have to take on probably more than they want to, so I normally kind of look after the researcher a bit, just kind of check they're okay. But yeah, I guess because of the nature of the filming and where we have to go, and it is remote and it's intense, then we all have to work really closely together and the chemistry has to be right, and it's a delicate balance, so that's kind of how it works in a way.
And what in terms about what you deliver? So when you finish your recording process, what is it that you deliver?
So I will deliver, I normally record to a compact flash and an SD card. Okay. And if I've been good, I'll name my tracks so they make sense. So I'll deliver, each day I'll give my cards. Oh, there'll be cards probably from the radio mics if they've got internal recording as well. So normally at the end of the day I give 4 cards to the researcher to download. Okay. And then at the end of the shoot, a few days later, I'll send my sound notes through because I'll have a bit more time to listen and write. I don't know if I have to do this, but I like to kind of find the bits that I think are really good. So if they need to use them, that because things often get lost in post-production because they don't have much time. And actually, it's really nice to go have a listen to these tracks, see if they work for you. Yeah.
And I guess that you want to make sure they use the bits that you like. I'm assuming.
Yes. Yeah. And not have to use so much Foley because it's really nice if there's a lot of authentic sound rather than design sound, I guess. And then normally it's a complete silence and a void after because the team are just so busy in the edit that they forget to tell you how everything's going, and then you get a little email saying, do you want to come to a party? And you go and watch the programme going out, and that's it, and you're like, okay.
So you don't have much involvement once you've delivered your notes and your files. You're mostly done.
Yeah, move on to the next job.
So tell us. I'm quite interested because of course lots of people in the room today are students, and we like our notes to be delivered with the recordings. But of course we do a lot of fiction, so that I guess you have more time to do notes on location, but I'm guessing it's quite different. I mean, I guess that if you're rock climbing, maybe stopping and making notes about your recordings might not be a priority. So maybe you can. If you can do all those things, I'd be very, very impressed. Yeah. So tell us a bit about how does it work with you? Do you do things on location, or do you go back, listen to it, and then do the notes?
Yeah, I do a bit. I find by the end of the day, my ears are so tired. I don't really want to listen I normally don't have time, basically, and when I'm actually there, I'll have my phone in kind of note mode, and if there's something of significance, I'll put that down. So when I get home, I'll elaborate on that. Okay. But yeah, the thing is with nature recording, a lot of the time you're always waiting for something to happen. So if you're distracted doing something else, you might miss it. Yeah. So
that's the fox gone.
Yeah.
Well, another 16 hours.
Yeah, exactly. So
Do you do do you use any kind of system, kind of like kind of a wireless system or an app system to take your notes, or is it just doing them afterwards?
There are systems like that.
Yeah.
No, but I just.
So you prefer
not? Do my.
No, that's fine. No, it's quite interesting to see how different people. Because people love kind of the wireless devices to take notes, on a laptop. But
you can do on the sound devices. You can set up kind of categories of things you might want to do, like I don't know, sync with the presenter's name, and then. Okay. Like I might do Arctic fox male or something like that, and then you can just quickly add a bit of metadata. But in terms of elaborating, I like to do that after. And it's nice listening. It's also really hard listening to something when you've got sounds going on around you. I really like to go somewhere quiet and listen. Otherwise, it's just really hard to know how clean the recording is.
Absolutely. Yeah. Were the cuddly grey animals? Were those the baby Arctic foxes?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice. So
they call them blue foxes, actually. But
so baby cuddly foxes didn't sound like a technical terminology.
The fox cub we were following was a white one, but the rest of the family were blue, kind of the grey blue, which was a bit of a gamble because they don't have a very high survival rate. And they did 3 shoots to follow this fox through its first 3 months. So they were each time they were a bit worried that the fox wasn't going to be there anymore, but it was fine. So
it's a bit sad, isn't it?
yeah.
Do you find that you build a bit of an attachment to the animal that you're following?
Yeah, I did. More some animals more than others. Like the Arctic foxes, I didn't really see very often because they were living in this kind of boulder field, so you had such small glimpses of them. But when we followed the elephants, I spent probably like a month with the elephants. The babies are so human, like in terms of like in the midday heat they would stop and find a bit of shelter from an acacia tree, and then the babies would you could see them just kind of going, and then they'd lie down, have their nap, and then we'd just hang out for a couple of hours. And then just the intimacy of it, because the adults, they'll kind of communicate through these really deep rumbles within their bodies, so you kind of hear everything. Actually, you hear the farts coming out of their bodies. So it is really intimate. But especially the baby we were following, she was kind of getting her courage up and learning to kind of defend herself. So she would do little mock charges that were just quite funny because they're very sweet. So it's
a little bit of attachment.
Yeah.
I guess if you're following snakes, less of an attachment.
Maybe. And cockroaches.
And I just want to pick up what we were saying about technology. So you talked about the radio mics and recording capabilities. Is there anything else that in the years you've been in the industry, you've seen, actually this has made a big change for me and this really helped me?
I think, just the digital recorders are amazing in terms of being able to, you can obviously mix your stereo feed that you're sending to the camera, but you've also got ISO tracks, so it means there's a real backup. If something goes wrong, you can also record before the fader, so even if you haven't got it panned up, you've got something there. Okay. And also you can use the Zaxcom and the A10s that have the internal recorder on the radio mics. You can put that on anyway, even if you're not losing range with them, just have another backup. So there's lots more backups, and that's a really good thing, but also it means that more and more production are doing their own sound, because even if they do a bad job, they've got something. So it can be, not they always do a bad job, but it can be hard for sound recorders in terms of them losing work, because production will do their own to save, because budgets are getting smaller and smaller. So
they're trying to save money on the sound side.
Yeah.
And do you do spatialized recordings, or do you do just mono recordings?
I normally do mono. I did it. So Andrew's a good friend from Bristol, but he lent me a stereo mic and did a little bit with that. But mainly mono. Yeah.
Is it because kind of portability and kind of having to do it quite fast?
Yes. Also, because the shoots I do are mainly kind of people presenting and wildlife, to keep changing microphones is just a bit tricky. So having a good mono mic just is brilliant.
Yeah, just better. And what's next for you? What's in your future career?
Yeah, I just keep doing what I'm doing, really. It's interesting with sound, because I think you've just got to keep learning. You can't just. I don't think I'll ever get to a stage where I feel I know everything. So I love working, but I also love learning and taking on everything I can. And I want to try always want to try out new toys.
New animals, maybe?
Maybe.
The sea otters next time?
Yeah, and also just keep learning kind of wildlife knowledge as well. So I'd like to know more bird song or bird calls, because it's actually, like, if you're sent on an assignment to record a specific bird, you have to be quite good at kind of picking out that call from, lots of different birds in a woodland.
So how do you prepare for that sort of thing?
I guess listen to what you should be hearing.
Okay.
And
But do you go to kind of previous recordings from other documentaries and see, okay, this is what I'm expecting to hear?
You could do that, or there are some great apps that have bird calls on them, so you can just have a little listen. But the thing with birds is a lot of them have so many different calls, it's quite hard to think, I've learned that one now, because then they might
now they changed.
They've got a real range of sounds. But
cool. And do you have any? Of course, we have lots of students today. Do you have any tips for students that might be thinking, about this type of career in sound location for nature documentaries?
Yeah. My biggest thing the biggest game changer for me was owning my own equipment, because I just got the confidence that, I mean, getting hire equipment the night before, having a quick go through it and then turning up on location in a pressurised situation, it can be really hard. So if you can invest in really good kit when you're ready to, then that's absolutely brilliant. I feel like if I'd done a degree at this level, then hopefully before I'd had children I would have had the chance to kind of immerse myself in maybe a traineeship. I think that's probably one thing that I would have loved to have done in terms of learning intimately with someone who's an absolute expert in their craft, so you get a real thorough education of what you're doing. Be keen but not overly keen. So it's funny with filming, when you're picked for a job, obviously you need to be good at a technical level, but I think how you are with other people is probably what clinches it if you're up against other people that have got the same skills. So be someone that's really thoughtful, tenacious, patient, kind of like, be the person that you think other people want you to be. Well, be yourself as well, obviously.
Unless you're overly keen, and then don't be yourself.
Be a bit cool about it, because obviously I'm cool. Not.
But I think it's really important because that's kind of what we hear from most people. I completely agree that sometimes it's those personal qualities that get you a job, and you know, technical skills, you can learn them and improve, and if you're passionate on a subject, you will push yourself to learn it. But sometimes if you don't really gel with a group, because you know, sometimes you have the opposite, people that are very arrogant, and that doesn't really go well with a crew. And I think those things are just as important to work on the technical skills, because that's the sort of thing that can lose you a job. Someone saying, you know what, I don't want to spend 4 months with elephants and that person. I just want the elephants. I don't want. Let's lose that person.
It's very intimate, and it also gets, you know, you're pushed to the point where you could easily have a real grunt with everyone. You've just got to stop yourself, in a way, and just
So lots of kind of personal qualities, I guess, quite important.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know how to elaborate on that, but
Now I think that just thinking about how to work within a group. In general.
And think about what everybody else is doing. Like what's going on in the producer's head. He's really busy, he's exhausted, he's been setting up the shoot for months, and now he's there and he just wants to have a sleep. What can you do to make him feel better? You know, anything you can think of. If you can help with something, then he'll just think you're brilliant. And same with the researcher and the camera op. Work really closely with them so you can both get what you want. And but also just keep your ground as well, because actually recording, you know, you might be somewhere where there's an amazing sound happening and you don't want everybody to make a noise. You need to kind of have a bit of a relationship with them where they, you know, respect that you need, you know, a bit of space to record that, otherwise you'll lose the opportunity.
Yes. So being able to tell people you need that quiet space to be able to do it.
It's quite a delicate thing to do,
Shut up.
I love you, but shut up.
And what about, do you have any advice about how to kind of enter the industry? If someone said, okay, I've completed a degree, I mean, I'm interested in sound, I want to go into the industry, I really love location sound, I love documentaries. Do you have any advice of how to take that first step?
Yeah, I guess if you can get a mentor, someone that can give you contacts but also just give you support if you're on a shoot and you're worried about how to do something, you don't want to lose face, and you've got someone there, that might just give you the confidence to keep moving up. I rely a lot on the, there's loads of Facebook groups and they're absolutely brilliant, and some jobs come up on that, but just in terms of connecting with other people and just seeing what opportunities might come out of that. I don't know, because I've never had to do that. I guess because I was in production, I kind of became a recordist with having known like loads of people. So in that way, my time in production wasn't, lost in terms of it taking me this long to get to being freelance. But Yeah, yeah.
But I guess that also means that someone, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that means that someone entering, say, as a role of a researcher for a production might then have, would you say that is reason enough to say that might be an opportunity to kind of shadow someone as you did with your mentor, or would you say that wouldn't work?
Yeah, I mean, Gary was very generous with me. I don't know how many recorders would do that, but if you did want to go into production, then you can start doing all the courses that the BBC have amazing courses, and I did as many as I could. And they have one at BBC Wood Norton, which is an amazing site. I can't remember where it is. It's a very mysterious place. There's lots of stories about it, but yeah, you can go and do
another presentation. That's a wine reception.
Yeah. There's they do drama, location sound, what's it called? Sound, I can't remember. Sound on location part 1 and 2, I think now, but they're amazing because it consolidates all your knowledge.
Okay.
And also it's just really good to just say, look, I've done a BBC course, take me seriously. Yeah. And if you have kit, you'll be taken seriously as well, but I know that's very hard at first to invest because it can be very expensive. But
I guess it makes you marketable, if that's a word.
Yeah.
Cool. Do you have any questions, Philippa?
I have all the questions.
So just so that you know,
quite short
so that everybody knows the event is being filmed. So if you do ask a question, it is being captured. So if you want it to be removed for any reason, let us know. Otherwise, it will be included in the video. That's the disclaimer. You can ask your question.
Cool. So I actually have two. I'll try and keep them short. So the first one is, do you have a particular pair of headphones that you use for monitoring? And then the second question. I'll ask the second question. You ask the first one.
Yeah, I use the Sennheiser HD25s. They're not very expensive, about £100, but they're really kind of accurate sounding monitor headphones. And most people I know use those. But I'm thinking of using some different ones because they're quite tight on your ears. When I work in hot countries, I just start to get really hot ears. So there are lots of different things you can use. You can use like in-ear ones or ones that kind of come over your ears as well. So there's lots of options. But those, if you're not recording for hours and hours somewhere hot, then those are brilliant.
And then the second question as well, when you're recording, do you think about kind of point sources versus more diffuse, or is it more just a case of you just got to capture what you can get?
Sorry, I missed the start of that.
Do you think when you're recording about point sources versus more diffuse to go with the images, or is it more a case of you just got to capture whatever audio you can get?
I normally just see what the camera's doing. So if he's on a wide shot, then I will be more wide. Unless something is happening and there's dialogue, then I'll go in much closer. But yeah, you've almost got to think what the editor will want it to sound like. Because if the shot is wide and they're miles away, the opposite. If the shot is close and the sound is, I don't know, far away, it's just going to sound very weird. So yeah, try and get into the mind of the camera operator.
Do you do that by kind of just kind of making kind of an informed guess of what they might choose, or do you just
see
communicate?
What lens they've got on,
okay.
But also they'll do cutaways afterwards. So say we were filming apple pressing for Countryfile and they did a wide shot, so I did the wide sound, but then they'll go in and they'll do cut to them kind of like cutting the apples up, so you get really close, and then because the shot is so tight that you can be as close as you like and you won't be in shot. So yeah, kind of get the opportunities when they're filming, really.
Yeah, Ewan?
I was just wondering if you have any advice about protecting or maintaining your equipment in especially difficult environments, like really hot or really cold.
It depends what environment you're in. Like with the, if you're somewhere cold, you can put like hand warmers on things. If you're somewhere humid, just try and find some means of drying it out, or getting it back to an ambient temperature and dry.
And you have to do that every night after the shoot?
If you can, yeah. I mean, the kit I've got is pretty robust. So like a 416, it's like bomb-proof pretty much. So depending on where you're going, pick your kit, I guess. But yeah, for instance, I was in Kenya and I had some Zaxcom radio mics and they were getting so hot. Because digital radio mics just get really, really hot. I think they're just having to do so much that I ended up kind of pulling them out and just lying them on the top of the bag. just keeping stuff in the shade. But yeah, in terms of maintaining it, at the end I normally I'll have like one of those air blowers that camera operators have, and I'll just kind of get all the dust and the seeds and things out of that. And just try and see what it's gone through and then try and reverse that, I guess. But yeah, it's not always easy.
Cool. Any other questions?
I guess it varies a bit, but when with the animals you're recording, what sort of percentage of the recordings are the exact same animal that's on the camera?
It's a trick question.
Yeah, it depends how close I am to the camera operator. If I'm far away, then most of it, I think. But if I'm near them and they're being noisy, then I'll have to go and do it again. I don't know, 50%, I guess.
I think many people seem to think, because I've noticed this perception that many people think that nature documentaries are just a lie and the sound is not there.
But they are a lot of them. It depends what they are. The series I've worked on have normally, if there's a presenter there, then there's a recordist there normally. So then most of the sound, Andrew can tell me a bit more about this. But if it's a blue chip series where someone's gone to Antarctica for months, then it's very unlikely there'll be a sound recordist there, and they'll get the sound from the archive and Foley, do loads of Foley. Right, is that about right?
Yeah, I mean, they usually come back and say, we filmed something no one's ever seen before. And we say, did you record it? So, yeah, we just make it up with phone.
Or I remember Kate, who works with Andrew, sometimes she said that someone had come back from Antarctica and be like, oh, I've got this great sound of this penguin colony. And she listened to it and they had the mic pointing in the opposite direction. It just sounded awful. So, yeah, I think it can be a bit frustrating.
So is this Kate Hopkins?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's done talks for us as well.
Brilliant,
yes,
yeah.
we get them all. So we're very much dependent on the production.
Yeah.
And I guess depending on the budget, as you said.
Yeah, if it's blue chip, then like Frozen Planet, Planet Earth, they're normally mainly Foley, I would say. Apart from, I know that they have recorders for David Attenborough doing his pieces.
Yeah.
And they may get the chance to do some sound there as well, but like natural sound, but mostly Foley.
Any questions?
How do you manage booing and mixing at the same time, especially since I can imagine with like wildlife it's so unpredictable?
Yeah.
Like practice it.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll rest my boom on my hip. So I've got hand free. I saw a recordist the other day do something quite nifty, and I'm going to copy it. So he had his boom right out, and then he rested it under there. So he still had his hand free like that. But yeah, sometimes I'll be in a tricky situation and my levels won't be right, and I'll be like, oh, this is really annoying. So I'll have to physically move myself away or closer to change the levels that way or affect the gain, but not the gain, but yeah, the strength of the signal coming in. But yeah, it's a juggling match. Yeah.
I think there's another question at the front, yeah.
Do you ever, I mean, most of your work is to picture, but do you ever go out and just record, sort of, say you were talking about bird calls earlier, do you ever just go and do that, whether just to sort of hone maybe your listening skills or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's normally just for me. The shoot I did with the Turner Prize artist was really amazing for me because her films, she does have some sync sound, but most of it is just she'll have a footage, a mute scene of whatever she's filmed, and then she'll just put abstract sounds over it. So that was really interesting for me because it meant I could record whatever I liked without having to think, oh, the camera's not filming, they're not going to use it. So that was, yeah, I loved doing that shoot. I'd never done one that wasn't TV for a TV product before. So production.
Any other questions? Ben?
A couple of questions. One, probably slightly boring, technical one. How are you tracking stuff? Because you mentioned you were sending stuff to camera. You also mentioned kind of saving stuff on flashcards. How much, when you're on the top of a mountain in Iceland filming foxes, how much are you sending back up to the camera track? How close are you working with the camera artist? How much are you getting a backup locally as well?
Yeah, so when there's sync, I'm always sending a feed. When I go and record like when the camera's not rolling, I'll just go off and I'll record it locally. That's why it's very important to do my notes, because then I can just say, call it a wild track, so it's they know there's no footage for it. So I guess that's why it's so nice to have the, you know, to be able to record in your bag as well as send the feed. Because first time I recorded, I just had an SQN4 and it didn't have it wasn't a recording facility, so it was all or nothing. So yeah.
Any other questions?
So just one more quickly. So what are some of the forums that you mentioned then that are online? Which we can explore?
So there's one, I think it's called Film, Andrew will know, Film and TV.
Film and TV
Product or sound for film and TV. There's one for women, a version like women in sound for film and TV. There's global mic frequencies is really good. Like people are quite often saying, "Oh, I'm going to Israel. What channels can I be on? Can I use channel 38?" It's normally the question. What else is there? There are some production ones. There's like Crew Me Now, but I never ever see anything worth replying to on that. There's normally indies looking for crew. There's there's a nature field recording one that's really good. And that's people, talking about what mics they use and sharing like their wild tracks that they film around, they record around the world. So that's quite cool. There's one, I don't think it's that good either. There's I think it's called Lavalier, or is it Lavalier? Lavalier mic hiding techniques, I think it's called. And people are like, look where I hid my mic today, and they'll be like, someone's hair at the top, or like on their glasses. It's quite fun, but yeah, the sound for film and TV, I think, is probably the most useful one.
Unless you want to have a great time with the hidden microphones. Anything else?
A bit like you had the elephant carcass. Do you have any particular single recordings or sounds which really stand out, which were particularly memorable?
I'm trying to think. I don't always get copies of my sound. I've only just started doing that. No. Let me think. I have some quite good elephant rumbles. They're just, they're so amazing to listen to. I like, I know it's totally sidetracking, but I love recording music, and I've got a few recordings of artists that I really love listening to, but yeah.
Before you worked in TV, had you had much experience of outdoorsy stuff? I mean, like, it just struck me when you mentioned like having an expedition leader.
No, I don't think I did. I did the Inca Trail when I was on my rainforest placement as a volunteer. No, I don't think I was. I don't think I was remotely tenacious. I think becoming a mother has made me really tenacious, because you have to survive on no sleep for years and years. But no, no, I wouldn't have said I was that.
So
I was
no
average in the outdoors.
No rock climbing before?
A little bit, but not.
Okay,
no.
so a little bit.
Not like, I would have, like climbing mountains, but not to the extremes that I do on filming trips. So that's why I love it. So it kind of pushes me, and
Or you wonder if you should start climbing mountains now?
Oh no, I think I just thought about it because I'd only gone camping for the first time last year.
Well, the thing is, you go on these shoots and they sound really extreme, but they provide you with everything you need. You know, they'll send you out like shopping for thermals and lovely like down, dungarees, and so it's tough, but it's not like if you were going to go by yourself and you had really awful gear, and then it would be tough. So, yeah.
Anything else? Any other questions? Final questions? I have a question,
Okay.
if I can. So you talked about mentorship being quite kind of key to entering into the industry, and I guess my question is, how do you go about getting a mentor in this sort of role?
I was going to ask if you set people up with mentors.
No.
No, you don't.
So I'm afraid the AES doesn't have that sort of resources. We don't do it.
I did a symposium for women in the sound industry a few years ago, and had a mentor that came out of that.
Okay.
She's been brilliant. She's like, she's totally up for me messaging her whenever I have a wobble about something, because she's been doing it for years. I don't know, Andrew. So Andrew is from Bristol, and he's just been an unofficial mentor, I guess. But he's amazing, because he
Are you offering his service as a
well,
mentor?
can you take everyone on?
One thing I can suggest, the Association of Motion
AMPS,
Picture Sound.
that's what I was going to say. Sorry, yeah.
Have a mentorship scheme, and that's pretty good because you get buddied up with somebody with epic experience.
Yeah.
I don't think you can go on the mentorship scheme as a student member, but I'm not sure about that because I don't get involved in the running of it.
Okay.
I've always got a mentor on the go, but a mentee on the go.
But something they can look up.
Yeah, that's something
and check.
you can certainly research. You can join AMPS as a student member
Okay, yeah.
for £25 a year or something. It's a bit more than that once you're not a student, but then you could get onto the mentorship scheme, and then you get a one-to-one. It's mostly email, but if you want to meet up, it's basically down to the individuals to organise.
Interesting. Cool. Do you have any final questions? Well, the last thing we of course need to do is to thank you for coming. That was
Thanks for
absolutely
having me.
fascinating. I mean, I've learned a lot, and it's great to have someone that is so passionate for their subject matter and so willing to come and share it with us. Thank you very much for coming all the way up to York. It's down, but it's up to York to share this with us. So please join me in thanking Ellie.
Thank you.